She told her mom she'd lie to me about the baby. What she didn't know was I had a vasectomy months before. I found a positive pregnancy test in our bathroom trash just 8 weeks after I'd had a vasectomy. The irony punched me in the gut. My hands trembled as I held the stick, 2 pink lines mocking me from the silence of our master bathroom. I wasn't supposed to be able to get anyone pregnant. That was the point. I did it for her, for us. But Sophie was pregnant, and it wasn't mine. I sank down onto the cold tile floor, the stick still clenched in my fist. My mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe it was old. Maybe a friend left it there. But no, it was fresh. Still damp. There were no guests in the house that week. No one but Sophie and me. I kept telling myself I had to be wrong. There had to be another reason. But deep down, I already knew. We'd been together 11 years, married for 7. I was 35, Sophie was 33. We lived in a quiet suburb outside Denver, Colorado. I'd always been the logical one, project manager for a tech firm, the kind of guy who color-coded our kitchen drawers. Sophie was the opposite, carefree, spontaneous, always going on about her yoga, her holistic journey, the next cleanse or retreat. We'd agreed, mutually, I thought, not to have kids. So I made it permanent. I didn't tell her about the procedure. I figured it didn't matter. We were aligned. Or so I believed. That night, I didn't say a word. She came home late from yoga, kissed me on the cheek, and flopped onto the couch like everything was normal. I lay next to her, heart pounding, wondering who she'd been with an hour before, who the baby really belonged to. The next morning, I left for work, early, but instead of going to the office, I parked down the street and waited. At 7:13 a.m., Sophie left for her usual Thursday class. 30 minutes later, I let myself back in. The house was too quiet. Mockingly normal. I checked her phone. Locked. Her laptop? Clean. No names. No texts. Just endless yoga studio emails and Pinterest boards full of nursery ideas. I was in the kitchen when I heard the front door creak open. My breath caught in my throat. She wasn't supposed to be back. I ducked behind the hallway and held still. Sophie's voice floated through the entryway, quiet but clear. I can't do this much longer, Mom. Yes, I'll tell him it's his. Marcus doesn't want the baby. He says it'll ruin everything. But Ethan always wanted a family. He's trusting. It'll work. Marcus. I hadn't heard that name in months. Her yoga instructor. The one with the long man bun and fake spiritual quotes he posted on Instagram. The guy I once shook hands with in my own home, while Sophie claimed they were just friends. Her voice drifted further into the house. I stayed frozen. Every word burned. He won't question it. He'll be thrilled. I'll say it's a miracle. Besides, he's had this baby itch for years. He'll believe whatever I tell him. The hallway spun. I held onto the wall to keep from collapsing. My wife, the woman I built a life with, was planning to pass off another man's child as mine. And not just any man. A guy she was cheating with. I slipped out while she was in the shower, drove until I saw the mountains, and pulled over to breathe. For hours I stared at the blue-gray skyline, trying to imagine a version of this story where I could forgive her. There wasn't one. That night, I didn't sleep. I made a plan. I was going to leave. Not dramatically. Quietly. But not before sending one final message. Not to Sophie. To Marcus's wife. By sunrise, I wasn't the same Ethan Miller who used to bring Sophie coffee in bed. That man, trusting, loyal, blind, died quietly the night before, curled on the cold tile floor, a pregnancy test clutched in his hand like a smoking gun. Sophie was still asleep when I got up. I didn't bother making coffee. I just stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her breathe, peacefully, innocently. It made me sick. She stirred and mumbled something about teaching an early yoga class. I muttered a lie about back-to-back meetings, kissed her forehead like nothing had changed, then left. I parked 3 blocks away, engine off, and waited. At 7:12 a.m., Sophie backed out of the driveway, yoga mat slung in the back seat, blonde hair up in that careless twist she wore when she was relaxing her aura. I waited until she disappeared around the corner. Then I went back in. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. The kind of quiet that mocks you when you know something's broken. I moved fast. 2 duffel bags, laptop, passport, documents. Anything that mattered. I didn't take a single photo of us. Not even the one from our wedding in Banff. But I did retrieve the pregnancy test. It was still in the trash, where I'd first seen it. I slipped it into a Ziploc, then into a padded envelope I'd picked up the day before. I'd already found her name, Grace Walker, Marcus's wife, a licensed broker based out of downtown Denver, judging by the address on her LinkedIn. I wrote the message by hand. No emotion, just facts. Mrs. Walker, I believe this belongs to your husband, Ethan Miller. Then I slid the test into the envelope and dropped it in the blue mailbox outside our neighborhood grocery store. As I walked away, I didn't feel better. I didn't feel anything at all. Later that afternoon, I checked into a month-to-month rental just outside Boulder. A beige apartment with thin walls, flat lighting, and zero memories. It smelled like Lysol and regret. But it was mine. I powered on my laptop and erased Sophie's access to everything. Bank accounts, shared apps, cloud storage. I left her phone on the family plan. I wanted her to see how fast I could disappear. Then I waited. The message arrived at 6:43 p.m. Unknown number. Is this Ethan Miller? I stared at it for a full minute before replying. Me. Yes. Who's this? The typing bubbles appeared instantly. Unknown. Grace Walker. You sent me something. My chest tightened. I didn't know what to expect. Rage, accusations, denial. Instead, Grace, I already suspected Marcus. I just didn't know about the baby. I blinked. Me? You knew? Grace, he's sloppy. Shared photo backups. Texts. Hotel receipts. He thinks he's clever. He's not. She paused. Grace, I'm not calling to cry. I'm calling because I want to make him pay. And if Sophie's anything like Marcus, I'm guessing you do too. I sat back in the creaky rental chair, stunned. And then I smiled. We met the next night at a diner just off I-25, somewhere anonymous, fluorescent lit, and unlikely to be visited by either of our cheating spouses. Grace was sharp, early 30s, dark auburn hair, minimal makeup, eyes that missed nothing. She wore a navy blazer over jeans like she was heading to a board meeting. Not a trace of drama in her voice. Let's cut to it, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. What do you want from this? Exposure, I said. I want her lies to unravel the way mine did. Grace nodded. Good. Because I want something even worse. I want his money. His reputation. I want to make him irrelevant. She pulled out a thin leather folder and opened it. Inside, transaction records, names, timestamps, burner phone receipts. He's been filtering untaxed income through fake wellness clients, she said. I've already sent half of this to the state licensing board, but a paternity scandal might push the rest over the edge. I blinked. You've been preparing for this? She shrugged. You don't marry a narcissist without learning how to gather ammo. We spent the next 2 hours building a case, piecing together dates, matching timelines. Her notes, my screenshots, every yoga retreat, every late class, every lie Sophie had fed me, and Marcus had fed her. You realize, I said slowly, they thought we'd never figure it out. Grace looked at me, calm and cold. They underestimated us. Back in my apartment, I finally powered off my phone. Sophia called 6 times. Left 3 voicemails. The last one cracked something inside me. Ethan, I don't know where you are, but I need to talk to you. I didn't mean for things to happen this way. Please call me back. I didn't. I opened our old wedding photo folder instead. Watched our smiles flicker past like lies trapped in JPGs. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. Let her wonder. Because this wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was war. 3 days after I mailed the test, I dreamed of my mother. We were back in her kitchen, the one with the chipped blue tiles and the lace curtains she refused to replace. She wore her sunflower apron, stirring soup and humming a lullaby I hadn't heard since I was 8. She turned to me, eyes soft, and said, "Don't let someone else write your story, Ethan." I woke up drenched in sweat. The room smelled sterile, lifeless. Her words echoed in my chest like a warning bell. It wasn't a random memory. That kitchen moment was one of the last before she died from breast cancer. I was 13, powerless, watching someone I loved fade away. That same feeling crept up now. Helpless, hollow, humiliated. Except this time, I could do something. Grace and I met again that afternoon. Same cafe, same table in the back. She'd done her homework. Her legal pad overflowed with timelines, transaction records, and a hand-drawn diagram that looked more like a criminal conspiracy board than a divorce strategy. I intercepted a flagged transfer. Marcus moved $11,000 to a Cayman account last week, she said. That's marital fraud. I can freeze it if I move fast. I nodded and handed her what I'd collected from Sophie's sync tablet. Dozens of photos from hotel rooms, private messages, and one damning voicemail from Marcus. Once the baby's born, we'll figure it out. We always do. Grace pressed her lips into a thin line. That's the last nail in the coffin. Are you ready to go nuclear? I asked. She didn't even blink. They torched our lives. I'm just returning the favor. Sophie called that night. 3 times. Left voicemails that pinged like static in my chest. I didn't answer. Instead, I called my lawyer. Fast-track the divorce, I told her. I want full separation of assets, no support. Enforce the prenup. She'll contest, the lawyer warned. She can try, I said, and hung up. The next morning, the first domino fell. At 8:07 a.m., Grace's anonymous dossier went live, posted on a file-sharing site, linked through a fitness forum under a burner account. It included the voicemail, side-by-side pregnancy timelines, and tagged Marcus's gym in the thread. By 9:12, the gym had issued a statement suspending him pending investigation. At 10:26, Sophie's yoga studio terminated her contract. Due to breach of community values, the statement read. Her boss used to be her matron of honor. By noon, our joint savings was gone. Moved to my private emergency fund. Credit cards closed. Passwords changed. At 1:32 p.m., Sophie knocked on my door. I didn't answer. I watched through the peephole as she shifted from foot to foot, holding a grocery bag and looking like she hadn't slept. Her shoulders slumped, eyes swollen behind big sunglasses. Ethan, she called, her voice ragged. I didn't know how else to reach you. I said nothing. I didn't plan this, she whispered. I was scared. Marcus panicked. But I knew you. You'd always be there. You're stable. You're kind. That was the moment it clicked. She hadn't loved me. She'd used me. I was a placeholder. A backup plan. The guy who would believe the lie because believing it was easier than admitting the truth. After she left, I blocked her number. Grace and I met again that evening. She looked drained but satisfied. He's been served, she said. Also, his investors are pulling out. Apparently, cheating on your wife and committing tax fraud doesn't inspire confidence. I almost smiled. What now? We keep pressure, she said. Court, media, financial ruin. I'm done playing fair. There was something in her eyes. Resolve, yes. But also grief. I asked, did you ever love him? She was quiet for a long time. I loved the version of him I thought was real. That guy? He died years ago. I nodded. I know the feeling. Later that night, I opened a dusty box in the closet of my temporary apartment. It held my mom's old letters, scribbled affirmations, grocery lists, and her will. At the bottom was a note I hadn't read in years. If you ever feel lost, remember, your story is yours. Don't let someone else decide the ending. Sophie had hijacked our story. Now it was time I wrote the ending. It started with a voicemail. Hi, Ethan. This is Karen Bloom, representing Sophie Carter. I wanted to reach out and discuss the possibility of settling things. Amicably. Amicably. I hung up before she could finish the sentence. Sophie wasn't just trying to keep the house. She wanted spousal support, a share of my deferred stock options, and continued access to my healthcare plan for the well-being of the child. The child that wasn't mine. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Later that week, someone else reached out. Daniel, Sophie's older brother. 6'4", former Marine, the guy who once threatened to break my fingers for mispronouncing their dog's name. We hadn't spoken since the wedding. He found me outside LaSalle's market, standing next to my car with a bottle of almond milk and a dozen eggs. Ethan, he said. His voice had that slow, heavy weight of someone carrying a family secret. Got a second? I shrugged. You planning to punch me, or just give me the Carter family update? He cracked a dry smile. Neither. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. That caught me off guard. She told me everything, he went on. Marcus, the baby, that you're not the father. I didn't say anything. I told her she's an idiot, he said quietly. You were the best thing that ever happened to her. I looked at him. Then why didn't she see that? Daniel sighed. Some people don't recognize gold when they've been holding it too long. But she's paying for it now. I nodded, got in my car, and left without another word. That night, Grace sent me a text. Final strike lands tomorrow. Everything's set. She was referring to the tip we sent to the IRS. Marcus had been sloppy, leasing equipment under fake LLCs, funneling payments through shell trainers, padding invoices with imaginary sessions. Grace had receipts. Literally. At 10:04 a.m. the next morning, Marcus Mitchell Fitness was trending on social media. By that afternoon, federal agents were hauling boxes out of his gym. The best part? He was there, sweaty, shirtless, in front of a class of soccer moms, when they slapped cuffs on him. Grace sent me a photo. Felt like justice needed a visual. Then came Sophie. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. But when the fallout hit, she broke the silence. An email. No subject line. No greeting. Ethan, I need to see you. Just 10 minutes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need to explain. Friday, noon. The Arboretum. I stared at that message for hours. Then deleted it. But I still showed up. Friday came. Overcast skies. Damp leaves on the walkway. I stood under the same willow tree where, 3 years ago, we slow danced to a street musician playing Coldplay. Sophie arrived late, bundled in a long coat. Her belly was much bigger now. She looked exhausted. Broken. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. I almost didn't. She nodded. I deserve that. Silence stretched between us. I know what I did was unforgivable, she began. And I'm not here to beg. I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you. You just thought you could lie to me forever? Her eyes welled. At first, I thought I could make it right. That I could just keep the baby, pretend everything was fine. But once you found out, I saw the look in your eyes. I knew I'd lost everything. You lost me the day you decided to keep his child and pretend it was mine. She pressed her hands against her belly. Her name's going to be Lily. My chest tightened. She's not a weapon, Ethan. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I wanted you to know. Lily was your grandmother's name. You loved her. I stared at her. Then I said, goodbye, Sophie. And I walked away. That night, I met Grace for drinks. She wore a navy blazer and a tired smile. We sat in the far booth of an old whiskey bar, away from the crowd. To consequences, I said, raising my glass. She smirked. To surviving them. It arrived on a gray Monday, an unmarked box, dropped at the foot of my new apartment door. No postage, no return address. Just my name, scrawled in handwriting I hadn't seen in months, but would have recognized blindfolded. Sophie. Inside, a plush rabbit from our Paris trip. A few photos. And a single cream-colored envelope, sealed in red wax. I sat with it for hours, the contents splayed out like artifacts from a life I used to live. Then, finally, I opened the letter. Ethan, if you're reading this, I found the nerve to send it. Her name is Lily Grace. I know you'll never see her as yours. But she laughs in her sleep like you used to. And when she smiles, there's a flicker of something that reminds me of everything I ruined. I'm not asking for help. I'm not even asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know she exists, and that no matter how she came into this world, I'll raise her with the truth. Because even though you're not her father, I want her to grow up knowing what kind of man you were. Not every man walks away from betrayal with dignity. You did, and that's worth something. I'm sorry. For all of it. Sophie. I didn't cry, but I didn't throw the letter away either. I folded it, carefully, and slid it into the drawer beside the deed to a small cabin I'd bought on the outskirts of Rockport. The kind of place where silence had texture. Clean air. No ghosts. That Friday, Grace stopped by. She'd traded her stilettos for hiking boots, was clerking for a federal judge, and brought me almond croissants from a place we used to swear we'd try and never did. We talked over coffee, the silence between us no longer barbed, just quiet. Do you regret it? I asked, referring to everything. Marcus, the revenge, the wreckage. She shook her head, slow and deliberate. I regret trusting people who thought I was disposable. But I don't regret waking up. That night, I dreamed of Lily. Not as a child, but as someone older, sitting on a swing set with a stuffed rabbit in her lap, staring up at the stars like she knew things no one else did. 2 months later, I was in Boston for a client meeting. I took a detour to the Arboretum on impulse. The willow tree was just beginning to bud, its thin branches curling like fingers reaching for warmth. I didn't expect to see Sophie there. I didn't. But as I passed by the koi pond, I noticed a woman pushing a stroller, softly humming a lullaby I couldn't quite place. The baby inside peeked out, eyes wide, mouth open in awe at the sky above her. She didn't notice me, and that was okay. For just a second, I stood still, watching a life I'd nearly been chained to, and then I turned and walked away. Back home, I made dinner from scratch. Salmon, dill, some pasta. I'd finally learned how not to overcook. No noise. No chaos. Just peace. My phone buzzed. Hannah Mitchell. Dinner tomorrow? I could use a friend. I smiled and typed back one word. Absolutely.